Water Quality Management Committee, April 2nd meeting, Selectmen's Meeting Room, Town Hall, will come to order. First item on the agenda is the Salt Pond MEP review. This is one in a series of estuaries that we've been reviewing beyond the ones in the south coast, but starting up in North Falmouth and working our way toward the south coast. We've been going to each estuary and just taking a sort of a broad brush approach to what's going on in that estuary, what are the possible options for dealing with what's going on, and so today Salt Pond is the estuary.
Made it around the bend.
The estuary du jour.
Yes, and all of this is really just a synthesis and maybe a synopsis of the Massachusetts Estuaries Project reports that have been produced for these watersheds, some of which have gone on to have TMDLs, total maximum daily load requirements. Others haven't, but we do have these reports, so we're going to take a tour through. Do we want to lose the lights, or can you guys see fine? It's up to you. We'll learn by the time we're leaving. Ah, perfect. All right, so here we are in Salt Pond. Where is Salt Pond? Salt Pond is along the west coast. We've got
South coast?
South coast, what am I saying, right? I was thinking we went around the corner. Oyster Pond, we went past because we already had the beginnings of a CWMP, so I didn't go into historical data. We just moved over to Salt Pond. And it's next to Sitter's Pond, which is in our backyard here at Town Hall. There are, sorry these are too dark. These are in the reports that you all have copies of. Important to note a couple of things here. There's the inlet at Salt Pond. They have 3 monitoring stations for nitrogen, and importantly, for this particular estuary, 2 dissolved oxygen stations. One I call the south station and the other one I call the north station. So sort of keep in mind where these monitoring stations are as we move forward. And here's the watershed. This is interesting because it's really a main watershed, a sub-watershed, and a contributing watershed, according to the MEP report. So here, down here, is Salt Pond. And this is what USGS had delineated as the watershed back a decade or so ago, 2 decades now. So that was the Salt Pond watershed. When MEP came in and redelineated and did additional monitoring, they realized that this goes all the way up, and this is Grew's Pond right here. Just to give you guys... Grew's Pond.
Yes.
Long Pond is right here. Our town water supply is right here, and Grew's Pond, which is a great place to swim early in the season because it warms up really fast, is here, and it's a contributor to the Salt Pond system. And then you have Long Pond and the 2 watersheds that are part of Long Pond, which is mostly protected land because the town protected its water supply. And the MEP report mentions that this line here is a contributor to Long Pond, which is part of the contributor to Grew's Pond, which contributes to Salt Pond. So it's a very interesting watershed. This, of course, is the 10-year travel time. So this original USGS watershed is really the 10-year of travel, and I would say that for our purposes, thinking from Grew's Pond south is probably what we care about. But that is the watershed. And from looking at watershed MVP, because I think it really helps illustrate nitrogen loading, each of those brown dots in this lower, there's Grew's Pond right there. So in that whole, what we call the lower watershed, you can see those dots represent nitrogen load. And that's what's interesting about these MEP. They show you the septic nitrogen coming, that's septic nitrogen load, I should clarify, are coming here. And then in the upper watershed, The dots are much smaller, which I think is very significant, that there's Long Pond right here. A lot of this is protected, but up on these neighborhoods, there is water use, and they're smaller dots. And so the way the watershed MVP illustrates things is the bigger the dot, the more the nitrogen.
These
Okay.
dots are smaller because they're further away and there's assumed attenuation or
That's the-
fractional
it's-
loss at Gru's Pond.
Attenuation
Right.
is exactly
But on
what.
the previous one, we had at least two different sizes of dots, but all in the same area. Was that based on water
Water use.
usage?
Exactly. And the lower part, there's a lot of seasonality.
Can you go back to the previous slide?
I can.
Oh, no, previous slide, which shows them all. Okay. I think it's important to distinguish that the large watershed that's north of Long Pond, yes, may contribute a small amount to Gru's Pond, and then on down to Salt Pond. But, I mean, if you took a number and said the upper watershed is 100, it's only a fraction of that comes through.
I have the numbers.
You
and
do?
We're going to get to that.
Oh,
You guys
okay.
are a clever group.
Good.
It's hard to stay ahead of you, so I'm trying to go fast.
Okay.
So let's get so this is the map they have in the report looking at bathymetry. And I thought because of what we're going to talk about in terms of the report's findings about Salt Pond, I also wanted to note this is a very deep, greater than 3-meter basin, and it gets shallower, the red being the shallowest parts of the pond and the blue being the deepest. Just to give you a sense of, you've got this deep kettle pond that's been submerged, and you can see that by this being greater than, I think, almost 5 meters, 15 feet or so.
15 feet.
And then it's shallower here, but really the shallowest area is here, and also because they're shoaling.
What are the red worm tracks? That's the
Just
survey?
errors in it's a model, and I tried to figure out, but the best of my understanding, it was computational color error, but not anything that's a particular feature. It's not a feature of the estuary, it's an artifact of the display program.
Or was that the track that they did to get the depths?
It was that, I'm not sure I'm not sure.
And
But it-
sometimes they use those submersibles to
Right.
go around.
And
the
that could have
pond.
been, right, that could have been the tracks of the submersible, but it wasn't bathymetry, which was what I thought was important. Okay, so with that sort of pictorial background, what did the MEP report find? Well, they first found that this is a flooded kettle pond that is separated from the ocean by the beach. And what is significant about that is that it limits circulation. It's got one spot that I showed in the beginning, where there's a culvert under the road, and that is where the tidal exchange occurs, unless there's a major storm event and which overtops the road. But Surf Drive is a pretty wide road, and there's a pretty wide beach between Salt Pond and the ocean, so it's really very limited, the circulation, by just that culvert. Report also found that it has been anoxic for as long as we've been measuring. So there's not a sense that there is some degradation that happened recently. There's always been anoxia, and that is a function of the depth of that deep basin, and there's always been not so great circulation. And there's no history of eelgrass. So this is not a system that had historic eelgrass that has disappeared. That basin, that 15-foot basin, has been there naturally because it's a kettle pond. And the characteristics of the sediments is that they're rich in organic matter. And there's not much benthic fauna, so the diversity is not there, and there's a lot of worms, which are indicative of a impaired basin. And it becomes sulfidic, I guess is how you pronounce it, but there's sulfur creation in that anoxic sediment that they measured. And there is a strong stratification. In the same way that we see that in Little Pond, there's a very strong sediment where it's less saline at the top and more saline at the bottom, and it stays that way throughout the season. So those are just some of the environmental characteristics. And other findings from the report, there is, because eelgrass wasn't the sentinel vegetation. They looked at the actual wetland system around the shore and found that it's starting to be impaired. And the other thing they saw was, since eelgrass is not what they thought was important to restore for, the dissolved oxygen became a very important indicator of the ecological health of this system. And what they found is in the northern station, there was moderate impairment, and in the southern station, there's even higher impairment, which they didn't explain particularly well, that I could understand particularly well in the report, that you would think, and I'm just going to click back to the maps where I show where those stations are. It seemed to me that this would show more impairment than this. But in fact, from a dissolved oxygen, the concentrations go more hypoxic and anoxic here than they do up here. And what they say in the report is that's because of the sedimentation and the occlusion and the lack of circulation. But it's also true up here, but it doesn't seem to affect it quite as intensely. So, and then I'm just going to click back to the last couple of points. There are, the MEP report talks always about a present load and a threshold load, and we do the math and we find that the system needs about 1,200 kilograms per year removed. However, when the MEP ran 100% removal of the septic load plus an inlet widening, it did not, from the model, meet the nitrogen concentration. So there's this is a system that's different than other systems that we've seen, I think because of its geomorphology and because of the surf drive and what it's done to the separation between the ocean and the pond, or other factors. And I've got the pie chart here that we usually look at.
How close did it get?
It was 20%. I can't remember exactly, but it was not by 3 decimal places. It was off. It didn't do it. So what we've got is this local control load, and of course septic is the big one. Impervious surfaces is another big one, and natural. What did they do here? Natural surfaces. That's turf.
Or was that's the turf?
The 7% is fertilizer. The 16% is impervious surfaces. This 1%, strangely enough, is the landfill, because it's in the watershed. But most of it is the septic load.
I think that's an error.
Yeah.
It is because of the Long Pond
Okay.
component, which is
But-
why I showed you
It's a
that.
stretch.
Yeah.
This is a pretty complicated. I thought, oh, salt pond, that's going to be an easy one to discuss.
No.
It turns out this is a real head scratcher on a whole bunch of levels because of its circulation, because it's got a lot of nitrogen that needs to be removed, because the septics don't equal that nitrogen load, because of that huge watershed that they've defined. And because when I spoke to the engineering department at DPW about, are there storm drains, are there point sources, they did not identify places where storm drains were going directly into the pond. It hadn't been mapped. We just hadn't.
They just constructed a storm drain that goes
They
straight
did.
into the pond.
That's right.
And that was the whole, along Mill Road,
Yeah.
that whole swale and that whole system, that wasn't a nitrogen removing system.
Yeah.
But it did infiltrate, so the bacterial loads, they did manage for bacteria. But it's still not going to get you the most.
So I guess
Bang.
the question that I would have, all the sentinel stations in the other coastal ponds have been set up so that they bring us back to the point where we had eelgrass. And that was how they backtracked into the sentinel concentration. Well, if there never was eelgrass here, what's the basis for the sentinel concentration?
And they talk about that in the report. In the report, they say what they've done to establish the target concentration of 0.5 milligrams per liter is to look at other submerged kettle ponds. So they looked in other Cape estuary systems that are comparable to this and said these are healthy, 0.5 is the number, and they don't just take one of those sentinel stations to get the concentration, they average the 3. So there are 3 sentinel stations. Like I said, this was a
Yeah.
complicated one. And what they do, and I looked at that too, is that there are 3 SB 1, 2, and 3. And so it's the idea that the average of these 3 monitoring stations would be the 0.5. And I can tell you, you can look in the report, and if I were had it online, I would search for it. They will tell you what comparable ecosystems they used.
Okay, keep going now, because,
I'm going to keep going.
yeah.
Just letting you guys. All right, so that's the percentage. What I wanted to, I'm only showing you this, Virginia, because I was thinking the same thing. Well, how big a deal is Gru's Pond, right? So from a wastewater load, the whole system is about 1,300, about split between greater than 10 years and less than 10 years, and a small 7 kilograms per year coming from Gru's. A de minimis amount, I would say. But that's why I put this here. And you'll see the landfill is also because of the Gru's Pond contribution. Small amounts, but there, just
But we agree, though, we all agree that's negligible.
de minimis, I would say, yeah. That if we were trying to do something, we would want to hit these 2 bigger wastewater components.
But a lot does come from Long Pond. A lot more than comes from Gru's Pond comes from Long Pond.
Long Pond is a different system.
Right.
It is not included in the salt pond system. The salt pond system is composed of these. Long Pond is a different system.
What is that middle thing then? It says Gru's Pond total and Long Pond total 34. Does that mean that's what gets in from Long Pond to Gru's Pond and then it gets...
And then it gets
and
attenuated
attenuated again.
and then considered into the salt pond system.
I see.
And that's all described in the text of the report.
Okay.
So I'm putting this here so if you were to go back and you wanted to dig deeper, you'd know this is sort of the cliff notes. These are the important places to look to get the information.
So the lower 2 blocks are the excruciating details of the negligible amount in the upper block.
Yes. Well said, Steve.
Yes, excellent.
Okay, so what we really care about. What do we need to remove and how are we going to do it? Salt pine, 1,200 kilograms a year. Build out, in this particular case, adds about 100 kilograms. A very sensible build out because the area is pretty large, either built out or protected land. So no quarrels with that. The first thing that they say in the report on page 111 is that the management focus should not be for eelgrass, but it should be for improving the benthic habitat in the shallower areas, and that's about getting the dissolved oxygen up. That's really what to manage for, as much as nitrogen. And then they say, really, you're not going to be able to improve either the dissolved oxygen or the nitrogen unless you really look at improving the tidal exchange. And that is something that would be another study unto itself, because there's longshore currents, there's where would you put a different inlet, how would you enlarge it. They did a initial iteration of an analysis, that's the last chapter of the report, and they didn't find a huge difference if you doubled the culvert size from what it is now. So it would have to be something more significant than just doubling.
We should note that the original entrance wasn't where it is now. They moved it to the west quite a distance, I don't know how far back, but I have a map from 1927 that shows it in a very different location, kind of like Bourne's Pond.
Yeah, exactly. Very much like
So
So
Bourne.
the
that-
fascinating thing here would be to put a second inlet to the east, as close as you could get to the submarine cable that they put in, and put a check valve in one of them, so you got circulation. And that oyster guy from Wellfleet that talked to us about check valves, and that's why I asked him the question, said that they work. They didn't like the duckbill valve, but the floating
valves
gate
are-
kind they thought would be perfectly adequate.
All right. I think the net is that, a CWMP, you start to getting to where salt pond becomes the next estuary that you're trying to restore. First thing to look at is improving tidal exchange. The other point I wanted to make is that we did observe 2 years ago about 1 million oysters And they were there last year too. I confirmed with Matt that and I had seen them last year, but they didn't grow. They seemed stunted. And there is some historic record, again from Matt Weeks, who looked at the historic record, that Sousa had actually noted that there were occasionally these oyster populations that appear, but they don't seem to get very big. So that was sort of an interesting phenomenon. Clearly, though, oysters grow there naturally.
Could you show us where this reef is?
Yeah. They were, I'm just going to go back to this map. All along here, and up in here.
In the shallow area.
In
the
the
shallow
in
area.
the shallow area.
Yeah,
Yep.
sure.
That's what I wanted to know.
So we've got our reefs. As we know, so this is next to last slide. We've got our fertilizer bylaw that by the numbers would get us 30 kilograms a year. You know, we're shooting for 1,200. We'd get 30. Just to give you sort of a perspective, a million oysters would get you on the order of 260 kilograms per year. So you're up at 200. So you still have about 1,000 kilograms to go. And the stormwater is sort of in the same order of magnitude, less than 100 kilograms.
Plus the oysters don't grow to full size, is what we're hearing.
You give them another year, and maybe it would take longer. But even if you could get them to full size, we would, but they would do a great job clearing up the water. But I'm not sure what they would do for the nitrogen, for the dissolved oxygen. So it seems to me that from looking at these alternative approaches, understanding what could be done from a flushing perspective is the next thing to look at.
Would flushing be crucial for getting the oysters growing better?
Maybe they'll do better with higher oxygen levels too.
I was going to say, if you could get higher oxygen levels.
Yeah. It's
What's
definitely
the surface salinity in there? It's probably pretty low, isn't it?
It's they had it in the report. It was like I want to say 17 or 18.
Oh,
So
really?
pretty good. Not like Oyster Pond, because there is tidal exchange. It's just not very.
Are all the sentinels measuring points fairly short distance from the surface, or any of them down deep?
They're all surface.
Right, when you look at they have one that's fairly close to the one kettle hole. Okay, the bathymetry shows SP2.
The kettle hole's right in here.
Yes, right,
But you're measuring up at the surface.
but they,
Yep, but you're measuring it at the surface.
at the surface.
Do we have black muck in the kettle hole and how much?
We have lots of anoxic black muck in the kettle hole.
But not in the shallow areas?
In the shallow areas
Okay,
too.
okay.
Yeah.
It's a mucky bottom.
Because salt water is denser than fresh water, whenever there's a major storm, there's a slug of salt water that gets into Salt Pond, and it settles in that kettle hole, and so it's very stratified. And that's also where the sulfur comes in. It comes in with the salt water. So it gets basically stuck there.
So improving the flushing may not help with that.
And it might help with the dissolved oxygen. That's about the only thing I can think of. It's not going to solve the kettle hole. I think you're right. This is a very unusual pond because of its geomorphology. And the kettle hole, we're stuck with that.
Would solar bees do a little bit of help?
It would create a lot of odor.
I
If you start bringing up that salt water, every so often because of southwest winds, the pond will turn over,
Okay.
and they have a tremendous event.
Call the selectmen.
Right.
I wonder where the name came from, Salt Pond. Is it historically always been very salty, or?
They did have
Evaporation.
those operations where they would take salt out of seawater all along the
Right,
beach.
right, right, okay.
Maybe that was it.
Oh, wow.
All the windmills were along that beach.
Yeah.
So the only problem of the kettle hole, since you're not measuring down in it, is when you have one of these turnover events? Because otherwise you could ignore it, right? Unless it absorbs oxygen from the surface
No,
water.
it doesn't.
And that's exactly
It's
what the report
stratified.
says, is that you wouldn't even think about that deep
Yep.
kettle. That's not.
You could think of it as part of the ground underneath the
Yes.
pond that matters.
Exactly.
Yes.
Leave it alone.
Yep, and it's the fresh water on top, or the brackish. It's actually,
Yeah,
we ought to call it
management,
brackish.
the management recommendation from the MEP DEP report was in the shallow area, improving that benthic habitat in the
Shallow
shallow
area.
areas. So we sort of gotta get out of jail free on the kettle hole because it is really unfixable at a pretty basic level. But the idea would be to really try to improve the, increase the dissolved oxygen, or at least get more.
Well, since we have oysters already, and we don't have eelgrass and never have, if we spent money to increase the circulation, what would be the gain? What would-
More dissolved oxygen.
Yeah, but what would show up in terms of flora or fauna that we don't
Worms.
already have or not have?
Just a wide diversity. Right now, we've got all kinds of worms. Worms
Less
and worms.
worms.
You'd have maybe other shellfish, and maybe they'd grow better. And
Probably you wouldn't have eelgrass though. on it.
no, you'd never have eelgrass.
So
You'd
you're never
have
gonna have
maybe the
eelgrass.
fringing wetland would be healthier.
Okay.
Would you have a situation like they had at Provincetown when they opened up the pond there? And all of a sudden they found they had all sorts of things coming in, crabs and everything else under the sun. They had an anoxic pond up there they closed off when the railway went through.
Duck Pond, you're talking about?
Whatever, the big pond that is there just before you get to Provincetown itself.
Okay, that would be a John Waterbury question.
Yeah.
It's from,
Yeah, I don't remember. But I mean, you're still going to have that deep basin, and it's still going to turn over and emit sulfide periodically.
Right.
And my intuition is that I wouldn't agonize too much over these sentinel values. That we figure out what we can do most expeditiously, and this isn't one where we need to hang ourselves, I think.
Especially given the lack of basis for their numbers. They were extrapolating from other places and doing all kinds of things.
Yes, going back to extrapolating, if you could go back to the one that shows the full watershed, upper and lower. Okay. I really question whether the landfill is in that at all.
It
with
doesn't matter, they're admitting it's 1%.
I agree. Just the fact that it shows up though is,
If
here's where I'm leading to. Because the implication is that the landfill plume somehow goes into the Long Pond watershed.
right.
And
We don't believe that.
we don't believe that. USGS did a study in which they presumed that there would be no precipitation for 180 days and this would go on for several years. I mean, they had to make such extreme presumptions in order to even get the groundwater to be in the vicinity, let alone, it just doesn't make sense. I think that's outdated information.
I'm going to note that in the minutes.
Okay.
But even if they were
That
right,
also
it's
takes
less
into
than
account.
1%,
It's-
so
I
it's
agree.
not worth arguing.
Well, it's the only reason I'm arguing about it is because the implication is that somehow the landfill plume is involved with the little pond, with the Long Pond
Pond.
watershed.
Oh, that's
And
it.
that I care about. And I don't think it's true.
And so do you if you drink the water.
Yes,
Right.
right,
Okay.
yeah.
I
And
was
it-
just
and it-
thinking salt.
And they conjectured about it too. I mean, they
Yes.
were not equivocal.
Right.
Was this
They were not
written,
unequivocal.
was
They
this
were-
written pre-capping of the landfill or
Post.
post-capping?
This is a very recent one. I mean, the date
That's
on
a
it's
good point.
2013
That's right,
or
it might be
14.
a
Yeah.
while till the capping.
Yeah.
effect is seen.
Right, and when you just think about the other water contours for the other more west coast, Sippowisset Marsh, West Falmouth, they don't match up with that.
Yeah, they seem to be going
Yeah.
further west, right?
Right,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's why I think that long tail up there, Area 5, I actually think that's a mistake. Okay, that was going to be my question, comment. But going back to Area 1, which is what we're really interested in, and then maybe Area 2, can you talk a little bit about the nitrogen generators that were larger circles? What were they?
Residences that use more water.
Just based on water use?
Just based on.
Yeah, put that up again. That again, I'm not sure that makes
was
sense.
intriguing.
Yeah,
And they're
look
not.
at that.
they're-
Is it the area of the circle? In other words,
It's
there's
the
10
size
to
of the
1
circle.
usage?
Yeah,
And what you can do, if I were on, online, is you can actually put your cursor over that and it'll tell you if it's, 6 kilograms per year or 3. So like the difference between this house and this house is really maybe the difference between 120 gallons per day and 160 gallons per day. They're not
Oh, it's not proportional, it's exaggerated.
It's not like a doubling.
No, so that's the Moors, it's Green Gate.
Yeah.
Are
and
they
that's-
using total
that's-
water, they're
that's
using total
probably-
water
90%
usage?
of water use is
Irrigating
water
their
use
lawn.
records.
Yeah, okay.
Law, I bet you a lot of
You
it's
could
maybe
Go by
Might be
factor of
some-
10.
irrigation.
I was gonna say, yeah, there
Yeah,
might be some
right.
irrigation.
You know,
Uh,
this all assumes, you know, this is Highfield, right? And the conservatory.
Okay.
That's
Well,
what that is.
valid, I mean,
And
that could
these
be.
What are
Could be
those?
just lawn irrigation that is
Yeah.
still just being counted as the 10, you know.
Right.
What you do is you take a water use account and you take 90% of it and that's assumed to be the household component and 10% is for water and lawns.
But it might be much
Is it
smaller.
possible
case,
they're
it might be
seasonal homes?
Well, that's what
Seasonal homes versus
That's
year-round?
Highfield.
Actually, that's the hospital further up.
Could be that.
Hospital's on the sewer. It's
Yeah.
Falmouth Academy and,
The Enterprise?
Highfield. Falmouth Academy.
No, that's Bramblebush.
That's the hospital.
We know where the hospital is, and that's on the sewer, so there's no circle for that. Then the first circle south of where I
That
think
could
it
be
says hospital,
Bramblebush,
no,
yeah.
that's the second circle. So I
first
think the
circle is Falmouth Academy.
That's Falmouth Academy.
You sure it is?
No, no,
No,
you're
it's
Falmouth
not.
Academy's further south.
Falmouth Academy is the second circle. The first circle's gotta be Bramblebush.
No, Depot,
No, wait.
No.
Get close and look
No,
at the
wait.
roads, we can do this.
Where's
this
Depot at?
is Depot Avenue,
That's right.
so this is Falmouth Academy and this is
That's
Highfield.
exactly
Oh,
right.
you're right.
This is, that's the hospital.
Oh, that's the
That is the
hospital. All right.
hospital,
Yeah.
sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So right
And that
there.
must be Bramblebush up there
So the
in the circle.
hospital-
That is the circle where Bramblebush
That's
is.
right. But why there should be any, they're not sewered.
They're not sewered, okay.
Bramblebush isn't, but the hospital
The
is.
hospital.
Yes.
So Bramblebush contributes.
And I have to
the
check
hospital.
there.
But in one of those summary slides, they're saying even if you take out all the septic load, you're still way off.
Yeah.
And if you look at the pond itself, the thing that's always intrigued me about Salt Pond, it's the only one that's sideways, so to speak, to the Vineyard Sound coast. All the other, more or less, all the others go way back in, Little Pond, Bourne's Pond, so on.
This one
And-
here.
Yeah,
It's
and
more
that's
of a-
because this is not an estuary. This is a kettle hole, and it's on the edge of the moraine.
Fair enough.
Different geology.
But whatever the reason, it's sideways.
Yeah,
And so if you had another inlet toward the east end,
Shores
and
Drive.
you constrained the flow to go in one and out the other one, you'd
Right.
do an incredible change in the flushing.
That point where she was marking is exactly where the old inlet was, a little more to the west, a little more to the west, right there,
Yeah.
west.
And you could go under the prop, you could have a culvert,
Remember where I used to get the big huge puddle that I used to ride my bike through?
you know, which they fixed. But
Right?
That's true. There's a puddle
Yes.
there every time,
yeah.
Huge puddle.
which is God's way of telling us this is where the inlet ought to be.
Right,
Yes!
yeah.
But that puddle was fixed by NSTAR.
Yeah, now it just puddles a little bit higher up here, believe me, I ride my
Yes,
bike here all the
you're
time.
right, you're right.
They didn't get rid of the puddle, they just moved it.
Yeah. Same reason there's a puddle on East Main Street at the Heights corner every time it rains.
Yes.
It's God's way of telling us that's where I used to have a stream and you guys
Yeah.
fouled it up.
Boxed it.
You can run, but you can't hide.
Right. Right.
All right, well, that's Salt Pond. You know, Steve, they do a pretty good job, and I just, like I said, it's a pretty big report, and I don't remember exactly how far off it was, but I'm going to try to take a quick look and see at some point how far it was and what they,
No, I think they just talked about widening.
yeah, and they
They
said going
didn't
from
talk
6
about having a second inlet and making one of them one way.
No, they didn't. What they did, just that question of, so you got rid of all the nitrogen from, theoretically, you got rid of all the septic, you widened the inlet, you still didn't meet it, how far off were you? I don't know the answer to that, but I'm gonna find that out.
But what I'm thinking, yes, that's good. But I'm saying in addition, if you did a lot of circulation, then you might only have to do a little bit of septic or substantially less septic.
Right, I think that's exactly right, that the next step is to try to look at circulation and what can be done, when you get to it.
Yes, sewering is off the table, I would say, in this area.
Yeah.
Because as you say, even if you did it, you wouldn't get where you want to go.
Right.
Good?
Thank you very much for a typically cogent presentation.
Yes.
That's that.
All right.
Was that last picture of
Well,
the pond in the spring?
Let's decide where we're going to go
Okay.
with this. what we've done in the past is make a summary of the main points so that we basically have a document that somebody can refer to in the future. If ultimately this committee gets to the point where it takes the whole of Falmouth and says, this is what we know about each of these, then basically that work has been done, and so I think we should do that. Okay.
And I'm going to write the summary document, and I'm going to include the question about that landfill going into the Long Pond watershed.
Right. And the 1 versus 2 entries.
And the 1 versus 2 entries, that's right, should be.
And this doesn't have a TMDL yet, right?
No, this would require its own CWMP, and ultimately we'd have to decide whether it's
Worthwhile.
worth it.
Yeah. They've produced this, which is enough guidance for us to deal with it.
Right, at this point.
All right, any
You
further?
mean we can decide not to do a CWMP?
Well, I think ultimately when you get, if this is the 15th pond, 30 years from now, I have no idea what the regulatory agencies will say. But certainly we should prioritize.
Oh, right. Right.
So I think that's our answer.
Right, you
We're
can
doing
put
the
it off,
best we
but
can
you
to
can't
try.
say categorically that you just could decide such and such a pond doesn't need, I mean, there isn't currently a mechanism for saying that an estuary
Right.
doesn't have to have a CWMP.
Right. Okay.
Okay, next item, the Eco Toilet Interim Report by George Heufelder, which was sent around, and comments were made, and I don't know that the version we have incorporates the comments, addresses the comments. I'm
Well,
not sure
weren't
where-
there some subsequent comments?
Yeah, you had some very late.
I had one big comment and then lots of questions, lots of issues. The big comment was there was a mistake in the report that needed to be corrected, and George said he was going to correct that mistake.
Oh,
And
okay.
include the information about the particular eco-toilet we were talking about.
All right.
Anything else? We had a long discussion among a number of us by emails, but it was all ungermane to this report, as was pointed out to me.
Yeah.
This is all not germane to the report
It was
itself.
more conversations about the program in general
Yeah,
and
yes.
not just about the monitoring results. I think as far as the monitoring results, the sound science and the results are accurate, I mean, as far as it goes.
We had, there was one major question about the nitrogen for the urine diverting system. We only had one that was in this. So I think it's a little early to determine the overall nitrogen removal for one urine diverting toilet, because it didn't seem to make sense. Came in at about 55% removal, and there's got to be another explanation for
Well,
why
you're
it wasn't as...
absolutely right. We're talking about 5 units that have been looked at for maybe a year,
For you,
Yeah.
yeah.
and that's not
Right.
enough to base anything on, really.
Right.
And the next interim report will have 2 additional urine diverting toilets, because they've been installed for
Okay.
almost a year. And then there's 1 more urine diverting toilet that should be in the ground bars. So
And then,
we'll-
might there be some, do you think, at all, or in the area of the 20 toilets that are going in? Or?
nobody know. You know, we have.
Nobody knows,
I-
yeah.
Nobody, don't know yet.
No one's been approached yet with the choices.
Right.
But we'll have 3 or 4 by the time we get through. 3 or 4 systems with urine diversion.
Yes, we'll have 4.
Yeah, okay, good. Well, that should give us an idea.
Any other comments or questions about I guess this is a final interim report?
Well, I think it was very promising. I mean, you look at the composting systems, and they're 93% removal, or over 90%. So that's exactly what we were predicting, and it's and if we did a hybrid with those, urine separation in a composting toilet, you even get
80-ish, right, 80-something%?
no, you would get it would be easier to handle the urine removal.
Oh,
You don't get the, what do you call it, the leachate. I was going to say the juice, but it's I guess the leachate is the problem. So if you can solve that with some of the better systems, composting toilets, or by separating the urine from the,
But I think the real issue boils down to, I mean, it's clear that a composting toilet isolated by itself, removes 90% of the nitrogen. The problem is then, what do you do with the compost and the tea? And George has investigated fairly carefully at the University of Maine with people who are doing composting. If you add human waste to compost, it has to get to a certain temperature in order to kill pathogens. And with the concentration of nitrogen in urine, you cannot get compost to that temperature. And so you have to amend it with all sorts of things. So in the world that we're living in at the moment, you have a unit which is removing 90% of the nitrogen. But now you've got to do something with it. And if you just take it to your treatment plant, you haven't gotten yourself very far. I mean, you can't put it on your strawberries or grow vegetables with it, because that's just putting it back into the groundwater. So, you know, until we solve that second step of ultimately, now you've got things packaged, how do you get rid of it?
I think Matt's point about the urine is very important, that if we could find some way of getting the urine out of the compost itself and into storage, then you could handle the urine, because they're doing it in, it's being done in Vermont. They can show how you do
Yeah,
that.
but they're putting it on fields. We don't want to put it back in the groundwater.
No, we don't have to put it on the
Well,
groundwater.
here's the thing, John, we've always talked about finding out how much of the nitrogen doesn't get taken up in the plants and ends up below the root level, right? And that's what they're testing with I just sent you the report today. I mean,
It also,
you
there are places
probably
it can be put
haven't
where
had
farmers would want it in a substitute for other fertilizer. They're doing that in Vermont.
right,
So
I mean, we're dumping how many tons of fertilizer on all over the place, and it seems like urine would be a worthwhile substitute. And it's pathogen-free after 6 months. And
We can heat pasteurize it too.
you could do that within, 6 months, but if you just wait for the pH to go up after 6 months, it's fairly clean. And, they're testing it now up in Vermont, Brattleboro. It's under state supervision, and I guess the University of Michigan is interested in participating in the study. So they have lysimeters
Lysimeters.
in the ground to capture the water that passes through the root system, and they're going to test that for your pharmaceuticals and all the other chemicals that are coming through.
Including nitrogen?
Including nitrogen. And so we'll see what happens, but it's they're getting tremendous hay fields, that's for sure.
There is one type of composting toilet which is working very well. It is a urine diverting composting toilet that doesn't put you have to.
The full circle.
The full circle. You only have you only have to deal with the compost. The urine is diverted, and you do whatever you do with the urine. So that is a possibility for dealing with compost tea also. You don't get the leachate in that system either.
Of course,
The
it's-
interesting thing about just to add on to what Wynn is saying, the compost is 90-something% water. So when the water's out of it, it's really,
You mean the leachate?
no,
The compost itself.
the compost without the urine. When it breaks down, when it dries out, it's virtually
Okay.
almost
Very little compost.
10% of the weight, the original weight.
Yeah,
But as a microbiologist, until you denitrify, until you take the nitrogen, run it from ammonia to nitrite to nitrate, and then denitrify it and put it off as N2 gas, you haven't solved the problem. Just putting the urine in a bucket and moving it around somewhere is not getting rid of the nitrogen from the system. What a modern sewage plant does is it, through denitrification, taking that whole system from ammonia to nitrite to nitrate and then denitrifying, it drives off 90% of the combined nitrogen as N2 gas. That's how a modern sewage plant works. and
I
that's-
understand that completely. That's nothing new to me, but my point is, how much is taken up by the plants? There's no data for that yet, and that's what they're trying to find.
Here's if you take the urine, The urine is fertilizer. It has nitrogen in it, which can be used as nitrogen fertilizer. The whole point is, you don't want to get the nitrogen out of the urine. You want to keep it in there until you put it on whatever you put it on. They've been doing it in Sweden, they're doing it in Vermont, they're doing it everywhere in the world where they use fertilizer. They're doing that. And we take natural gas, we turn it into urea or whatever it is we do. We transport that here and we put it on our things. And if we cut that out and put urine back on it, you are substituting for something that's taking a great deal of energy to produce. And it's big gain. That is the argument for taking the urine and using it. Not to get the nitrogen out of it, but to keep it in there. If it can be done. If it can be done on the Cape, and if it can be done for the money that we need to. And that's, we don't know yet how much it's going to cost to do all that. But I think it's going to cost less in the end than any other method. Now, that's what I think, but I haven't done the numbers yet. So,
Can I get a motion to do something with this Equatorial interim report?
I move that we accept the report and give George Hoyfelder our thanks.
Yes. Moved
I'll
and
second that.
Seconded by
Second.
everybody. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Pass our thanks on to George.
Well,
Fertilizer bylaw mailing. Everybody got this in the email? It's exactly the same as last year.
it's the same one we had.
it is last year's
It's
list.
going to the same people, and it's going to cost the same amount of money, which we are being asked to come up with a piece of. How much do we need?
$1,500 for the printing,
How much?
$1,500 for the printing, and postage would come from the Division of Marine and Environmental Services.
So we're just being asked for the printing.
Printing.
That's right.
I had one question on the first page. If you look on the second paragraph from the bottom, it says the bylaw bans fertilizing any part of your lawn between October and April. And it wasn't clear to me whether that was all lawns in Falmouth or just within 100 feet.
That's everywhere.
That's everywhere.
Well, it seems to me that maybe ought to be made clear, because
You can't ever put it within 100 feet. Oh, I see what you're saying. You're thinking people might
misinterpret that. In other
Yes,
words,
it's possible.
if they think that's just the people within 100 feet can't do it between October and April.
well, they're not getting the letter, though.
Anybody
Only
who puts
people within-
fertilizer in their lawn right now is going to dodge the piles of snow.
No, my snow's gone. I can put fertilizer on that.
You're this guy, if you're getting paid to fertilize, you'll dodge the snow.
They're still plowing the snow. We're going to fertilize.
I've got plants coming up in
Actually,
my
it's the
garden.
same
now.
people
Yeah, I
who
can
do
see
these
people
things.
doing it.
John, do you want to send me a proposed rewrite?
When I read that, I just found that a little confusing.
Which
it
paragraph
is
are you talking
Ju-
about?
Just on the first page where it says,
This
it's
bylaw?
real, no, it's actually, if you get rid of the thank you, it's the second one up.
The bylaw bans fertilizing any part of your lawn between October 16th and April 14th.
Well, that's why it says any part of your lawn.
Yeah.
It starts
So-
out by
So
saying-
what's the confusion?
When I read it, it wasn't clear to me whether, everything above that is talking about within 100 feet of a resource.
Right.
Then
Well-
all of a sudden you switch,
Okay.
and it's anywhere.
Well,
But-
just make it a declarative. Between October 16th and April 14th, you cannot fertilize your lawn.
Any part of your lawn, it says.
Any lawn.
Any
You
part,
could
any lawn.
Underline any part. How's that?
Okay, I mean,
All right.
that's
I'll
an easy.
underline any part, that seems the
Is the part the thing that's confusing? Maybe you should just
Yes.
say your lawn.
Your lawn, that's
But
what I
I don't have a copy of it in front of me, but it sounds like if you're saying the first few paragraphs are emphasizing the 100 feet.
feet, right.
See, in fact, the very first, you are receiving this because all or part of your property is within 100 feet.
Okay, yeah.
All right, so, as somebody just said, if you're not within 100 feet, you in principle won't even be reading this.
Right.
But you might see a copy of it or something. And so
Then you
you
get
want to
down
at
to
least,
here.
you get down to here, and it sort of implies, we're only talking to you people within 100 feet, so it's your lawn. Whereas what you really mean is, by the way, regardless of where you are in Falmouth, you can't fertilize at all between October 16th and April 14th.
I think underlining would be perfect.
Okay.
Also, much more than half of our lawn, for example, is outside the 100-foot line altogether. The lawn we don't fertilize it.
If you did, you wouldn't.
Yeah. that one.
Okay, well,
Okay.
underlying any part that makes it pretty clear.
Yeah, yeah.
Until you get your urine diverting toilet.
Right. Right, the other thing I would do is bold between October 16th and April 14th.
Yeah.
So that the time period
Yep.
is very clear.
I think you're right, it's confusing.
Okay, we need a motion to appropriate $1,500
Mr. Chair,
from,
Make a different comment?
oh, yeah.
If there's a desire to save a few pennies, and if this is going to be done every year, it's two sides, so it could be put on one piece of paper.
It is on one piece of
Okay.
paper.
And so it could be put in my old favorite, the water bill, if there was a mechanism for culling that to just the people within 100 feet. And then Department of Marine Services could pay for the printing, and no one would have to pay for the distribution.
I
Okay.
don't think they can.
I
Can
think
they?
it would be desirable to have someone else pay for this eventually. It can't be an ongoing thing for us.
My first thought. Let's do it this year and then we'll say that we'd like someone else to do it.
There's something, the brochure is going in the water bill this year.
Oh, for the stewards.
Yeah, the Keep It Blue campaign. I did think about the water bill. And the other thing is, if you put it in the water bill, it is not a targeted mailing for the purpose of enforcing the bylaw. I mean, we talk about fertilizer bylaw, and 3 or 4 people get up and say, you can't enforce it, you know, that's, nobody knows, blah, blah, blah. If you do a targeted mailing to people from the town of Falmouth, you get a better shot at it being heard.
Right.
And our cost is the printing,
Yeah.
not the mailing, so.
And you couldn't say to everybody in town, you're receiving this letter because
No,
all...
no, you wouldn't want to send it in all the, then the
No.
cost would be huge.
And
So
you
you'd
don't-
have to
and
make,
you can't
I said,
parse.
only if there was a mechanism
and
for
there
just
isn't.
putting it in
I
some
don't
water
think
bill.
there is.
They contracted out to someone else who does the
Right.
mailing, and they do all the accounts, water accounts, and that's it, there's no subset.
I mean, in principle, computers are pretty versatile, and they, if you called the right contractor, they'd say, yes, for X dollars, we'll put this in just some of them.
Yeah.
For X
For
dollars.
$1,500, they will do what you want.
Because you'd still
Okay,
have
so-
to pay for the printing.
Yes.
Well, but
So-
then Department of Marine Services could pay for the printing, because they wouldn't have to pay for the distribution.
A motion has been made by somebody, I think.
No,
No,
not
not
yet.
yet.
I'm moving that we approve $1,500 for printing the fertilizer bylaw letter.
Can you say up to 1,500? Because it may
Up
not
to.
be as...
Up to, okay. And I think we have to say that it has to come out of stormwater, which is the
Yep.
category we're using right now.
Second.
Made and seconded. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Members and staff report. Any reports? Matt?
I went to the Mashpee Board of Sewer Commissioners after our meeting last March 19th, and they were very happy to hear that the Munikis Quashnet study was still on the table and that we're trying to get funding for it. Wouldn't be by this, that deadline we had talked about. And they're eager to get together and meet with us. So waiting for, I don't know if you've taken that any further, if there is an invitation yet to get together, but they're interested in doing that.
We talked about it, and then the Cape Cod Commission came up with its own idea about getting folks together, and I think that the town fathers and mothers are going to be meeting with folks from other towns soon.
Okay.
Is that what the Cape, that's the meetings of the Cape Cod Commission?
Yes.
Which are closed to anybody who's not invited to come? or-
They've decided they're not closed.
Oh.
And that was a mistake of the reporter. All of the 208 meetings are open.
Okay.
So it doesn't, I mean, some are open to listen to as opposed to take part in. And my hunch is it's that kind of a meeting, but they are going to go forward with that.
Tonight at 7 o'clock, there's an interesting talk at the
Yes.
Wacoit Bay Reserve. Matt Charette from the Chemistry Department at the Oceanographic. It's going to talk about groundwater in Wacoit Bay.
I thought
And
it was
he's really sharp.
Yeah, go ahead.
You're going, oh, good.
I'm going to go
Wonderful.
too.
Excellent.
All right, any other reports of members of the staff?
Let's see. The Silent Spring study, I just was asked to let folks know that they are really looking for, they want to do a study of flame retardants in septic systems, and they're looking for volunteers. So Laurel could really use people that, non-stick cookware, no iron shirts, Scotch Guard on your area rugs, wall-to-wall carpeting.
They're going to spray you with flame retardant. See how it works.
They want people who have no flame retardants, or they want people who have flame
Do
retardants?
have.
Well,
flame
everybody
retardants.
has them. It's in
Really?
everything.
Well, what
It's
do
in
they want?
Furniture.
Furniture.
What do they want? I
They
mean, what
want-
would the person who, let's say I said, fine, they just come over, lift the lid on my septic, take a sample
Yeah.
and go away?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Would you
Okay,
be
they
willing, because they are struggling to find, they had a 10 to 2 meeting at the library yesterday and didn't have a very,
Nobody came.
But I mean, they're looking only for 5.
they're looking for 5 people. They'd like to have a group.
I mean, I would be
It's a
happy to volunteer,
no-brainer.
but it's
They-
going to be a totally uninteresting house.
They could have our,
Yes.
Mine too.
they could
Mine
take
too.
samples of our urine. I mean, it's in the tank. They can just, that's pure, that's where it's going to be. But the county is already taking those samples, so maybe,
Flame retardant
hopefully they're
urine?
getting together
Now,
with
this
them.
is a new program, and
Okay,
Bob-
well-
this is just Laurel's new program, and I was asked to let the committee and our nationwide viewing audience know that if you are interested in this,
But scientifically, it's bizarre. I mean, 5 random septic tanks in Falmouth, you sample them, look for parts per billion of something, and what do you correlate it with?
I think you should ask Laurel that.
Well, if you took the
You're
5,
right.
if you took the 5 of us at this table, you'd find nothing.
They do a questionnaire, so if you're willing to participate, they have a screening questionnaire. So they're looking for 5 people that do have. We have no nonstick cookware in our house, not one.
Yeah,
We have
don't
no,
either. We don't know.
my furniture does not have, that. I don't have any furniture, it's everything's wood.
Yeah.
And my couches, and my tell you all my couches.
But-
But, I mean, if you have an area where you just don't have a lot of this stuff.
Okay, duly noted. Anyone who wants to
That's all.
volunteer for this is welcome to do so.
Yes, that's all I was saying.
Well, I volunteer.
I volunteer too, but it's
Okay, then I'm
bizarre.
gonna let Laurel, I'm gonna send an email introduction for you and Matt too. Did I hear both of you? Okay, I'll
Sure.
send that to
You did.
Laurel, she would appreciate it.
Except that Southport is not in Falmouth, it would be a good place to go get some of the people in Southport. They all have new homes with all new stuff, lots of flame retardants in them, I'll bet.
You should send Laurel an email.
Excuse me?
Send Laurel an email.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. So email
Places like that, they have lots of stuff.
I mean, I'm happy to do it too, but I just don't think she's going to find anything very interesting.
Well, she will,
I'll be perfectly willing to.
and when, excellent. I'm gonna send her all your emails and she can contact you directly, not my project.
Any other reports of members of staff?
I just want to reiterate that I sent everybody the Rich Earth Institute's video and information by email today, so take a look at it. I think it's interesting.
The,
Is that the one that, what's his name?
Abe,
Abe?
I know it's by A, but was that the one that Ben sent to us?
yes.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, good.
There's been some, we're out of the sewer business now, but there has been some progress on that, and I think I'll just mention what it has been, which is that the bids for the different components of this project were opened and came in at a more than satisfactory amount.
Great.
The net is less than the original estimates.
Good.
Fantastic.
The town got everything in to the state in time to be considered for an economic justice grant. And everything had to be in by April 1st, and that has occurred. So to the extent there is an economic justice component and we qualify, and the town may actually see some money for that. It's not money, it's basically debt reduction.
Yes,
Instead
forgiveness of principal.
Forgiveness of part of the loan.
Oh, great.
The kind of thing where you're somebody who can't pay, that gets a reduction? or-
Well, it would be to the town, that instead of borrowing X amount of dollars from the SRF fund, we borrow X minus whatever the amount is for the grant. So it saves the town some money, which could be passed along to the people in the area.
I see.
There's another piece of this that...
Well, that would affect the 70% betterment, right?
Well,
70%
that
of a
was
smaller
what
number.
I was coming to.
Yes.
The betterment, it now appears that the target date for getting a betterment hearing, it would be the mid to the end of May. In that time frame, they'll have figured out what the allocation should be for the commercial areas. They will have figured out how many lots are buildable or not buildable and accessible or not accessible. Hopefully, they will be able to figure out pretty accurately the actual total cost of the part of the projects that the people in the area are going to pay for. And we may actually have numbers to show, to share with them as to how much the low-pressure people are going to have to pay or not pay for the extra cost of their installations. This is actually on track to be rolled out toward the second half of May.
Eric, I know it's not in our bailiwick, but it seems to me an incredibly important component of this project is that we somehow, in the enterprise, there's a timeline of what happens on what street at what time,
My
so
friend
that
was
the
asking
community
exactly that,
knows
yes.
when to anticipate what phases of this project are occurring at the moment and how they can plan to, and, I don't think that's for us to deal with, but I think it's critically important that we pass that along and make sure that somewhere, and I would suggest not only on the town webpage, but in the enterprise, we get that.
They have a map
and-
showing
And just updates every periodically as this project
Well,
proceeds.
you're absolutely right, because they are talking about
Phasing,
doing it now. We're talking about this summer. People having streets torn up and pipes put in, so that's really important.
I think John's absolutely right, because it affects the credibility of the town. Because the kind of objections you get at town meeting are things like, remember the high school. In other words, this amorphous blob, the town government screwed up, so everything in the future they will screw up.
Don't remind
Or
anybody
change
of the
it.
high school.
Right.
Well, I'm sure John, as a member of the Board of Health, remembers the West Falmouth sewer system and all the Silver Beach sewer
Silver.
system and all the complaints you got there, so I'm sure he's speaking from experience.
All right, any other reports of members of staff? We have 2 sets of minutes to review and vote on, both of which were sent around to everybody.
And there's one correction on the 5th, which is Matt withdrew his motion. It wasn't denied.
Right.
It was a withdrawal.
Okay.
So I made that change to the minutes.
I noticed a typo I wish you would correct in the first one, Minot is misspelled.
On the
Somewhere in
29th?
Somewhere in it, I think it's the,
Is it the 29th of January, or is it the 5th of March minutes?
I think it was the January 20, it was when you talked about Minot Beach.
All right. I spelled M-E-N-A.
Print off the next 2 pages, so we may not have.
M-E-N-A-U-H-A-N-T.
Minahont.
You're
I
right.
forgot the U.
A-U.
Yeah, AU.
I forgot the A-U.
It doesn't, the spelling doesn't.
Minahont.
Menhont.
Minahont.
M-E-N-A-U-H-A-N-T. Yeah, I just put the U in the wrong place, sure. I
Well,
will
you didn't
fix
have
that.
enough, you didn't have enough, you didn't have enough letters.
All right, do we want to hear a motion on this?
Motion to approve the minutes of January 29th, which was the Bourne's Pond meeting.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And I thought the second set was March 19th.
It is.
Oh, it's the 19th. That's right.
19th.
It's already April. Sorry.
Okay. Motion to approve the minutes of March 19th.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Unless there's further business to come before the meeting, I will entertain a motion from Matt.
Just one comment, our next meeting will be the 5th Thursday of
Oh, right.
April, so it's the end of April,
The 30th.
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 What will be the next meeting after that? I would like to
Yeah,
know.
well, that's a fair question. What do we want to do in May?
I think,
Normally, it would be the 14th and the 28th,
no,
No, it'd be
7th and the
7th.
21st.
7th and 21st.
All right,
I will not be here on the 7th.
okay.
I think I'll be gone on the 21st too of May.
Well,
I will be here for both of them, so far as I know.
when's the Memorial Day weekend?
Memorial Day weekend is the 24th, it's late.
Okay.
So I think we should try and maintain our schedule of the 7th and the 21st.
Good.
Okay. And are we to assume that it's not sailing weather yet? So 3:30 is still a good time?
Right,
3:30.
right. June is the big question.
Okay. Well, we'll get there when we get there. So
That's it.
7th and the 21st.
3:30.
3:30 here.
Okay, good. Okay.
All right, Matt.
I move adjournment, Mr. Chairman.
Moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor? signify by
Aye.
saying Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
Good,
John,
An hour.
yes, right, that's good.
you really could, you was what I was